Hello, my name is Lee, and I'd like to welcome you to the Rocky Mountain View. Today I'm back on the Kananaskis Trail, a road which runs between the Trans-Canada Highway, just east of Canmore, Alberta, north to Longview, Alberta, about 150 kilometers away. It's a fantastic scenic route that cuts through the heart of the Rockies. Now my wife and I in the summer, we'll come through here probably about a dozen times a month to picnic or ride our motorcycle from one end to the other. And we've been blessed to see just about every form of wildlife along the way. From grizzlies, elk and deer, Rocky Mountain sheep, black bears and eagles. Besides, just a wonderful view of the snow-capped mountains ahead of us, and the valleys, forests and streams. It really is an amazing, eye-opening drive, where you can't help but gaze and wonder at the beauty of God's creation. A place I would urge all of you, if at all possible, to visit. It's very popular all year long with tourists from around the world, and hikers, bikers, cross-country skiers, hang gliders, and mountain climbers. You name it, and they're here. Now today, before I get into what our new channel, the Rocky Mountain View, is all about, I want to share an email we received from a new viewer. And then, after reading it to you, I'll explain to other first-time viewers what our goal is. So here goes. Hello, Lee. My name is Jerry. That's G-E-R-I. I watched your video, The Voice of God, and right away I wanted to write to you and thank you for sharing your experience, and also to share with you mine. I come from a broken home and had a fairly dysfunctional childhood. You see, my father was seldom around, and when he was, it was always very stressful. It seemed like though we hardly knew him, whenever he was home, we were always supposed to know exactly how to act and behave around him. I remember feeling like I was constantly having to walk around on eggshells. My parents ended up divorcing when I was 7, and my father rarely sent my mother money. So my mother always had to find various ways to provide for me, my older sister, and younger brother. Unfortunately though, in our small town, work was hard to come by, so we never had much. But Mom did the best she could. Then, during one really bad period, she sent my sister and me to live with relatives for just a while, until she was able to get back on her feet. But unfortunately, we were never together as a family again. Dang, Beth, I'm sorry to hear that. At one time or another, over the next few years, I ended up living with every relative we had, and sometimes even non-relatives. I found out very early that learning and obeying the rules of the new house I was living in made things a lot easier. Though I still had a hard time trusting anyone and didn't make friends easily. So, by the time I was in my teens, I felt unloved, abandoned, lonely, and just very unsure of my future. But God had a plan for me. When I was 13, I lived in a Christian home where church attendance was a big part of life. And one day, while listening to a sermon, God showed me that His love for me was unconditional. That very day, I began a personal relationship with Jesus, which has ended up being far greater than all the other relationships that have been missing throughout my life. Now, meanwhile, periodically, my father still floated back in and out of my life. As every once in a while, if he happened to be in the town where we lived, he would call. Then years later, after I married, and I was the mother of 2 toddlers, he showed up one morning at my door, unemployed and needing a place to stay. He lived with us for about 3 months, and then one day, just like when he first showed up, he didn't come home again. The next time he dropped by, I had 5 children, and this time he stayed for several months, which gave me and my children a much better chance to get to know him. The last time Dad came by, I was working as a nurse and he was terminally ill, and he needs someone to take care of him. He told me that though he lived his life exactly as he wanted, it had cost him everything he'd ever held dear. He said, "Don't get me wrong, I'm not afraid to die, but looking back, I wouldn't wish my life upon anyone." When I told him I couldn't bear thinking that someday I would be in heaven and he might not be there, he said not to worry, that he'd made peace with the Lord a long time ago. After my father passed away, I was distraught. I could find no evidence that he'd ever had a relationship with Jesus, and whenever I did think of him, I always saw him as he was just before he died, helpless, sick, and struggling to breathe. I just couldn't seem to shake my sadness. Exactly 1 year later, on the anniversaries of his death, as I was leading the Sunday school class I taught, I started to think about him. I prayed, "Oh Lord, I'm so sad thinking about my father. I wish there was some way you can let me know that he is with you." Later, after class, I began to leaf through the new lesson guides we just received, not really paying any attention, when suddenly something on one of the pages caught my eye. But it had passed by so quickly, I couldn't tell what it had been. I started turning the pages back slowly, one by one, hoping to come across it again, looking for anything. Suddenly, on one of the pages, I found myself staring at a half-page picture of my father. I can't begin to tell you how amazing it felt and how thankful I was to Jesus for answering my prayer. And to this day, I have no idea how his picture made it into that program. Thank you for letting me send you my story. My hope is that if you read it, maybe it'll help someone who is listening. God is real, and his love for us is unconditional. Take care, and may God bless you and yours in your new endeavor. Jerry. Well, thank you very much, Jerry, for your kind words. They certainly are appreciated. You know, I can't imagine how awesome and reaffirming it must have been for you to find your father's picture in that booklet after praying to Jesus to let you know if he was with him in heaven. What a fantastic answer to a simple prayer. You know, I have to be honest. At first I wondered at how difficult it must have been for you to welcome your father back into your life after everything he'd put your family through. But then when I reread your story, it hit me like a ton of bricks. At age 13, you found Jesus. And I'm sure that was what allowed you to forgive him and accept him back into your life. What a wonderful story. You know, I often wonder about all the little things that happen in our lives, the funny coincidences and all the tiny little events that often come together at just the right moment for something wonderful to happen. And how we just smile and shake our heads and wonder at how the stars lined up so perfectly for us. And I've often wondered if those little events aren't also God's doing. Not an answer to any specific prayer, but just his way of letting us know that he's always watching over us. Makes you think, eh? Now, one quick minute to explain to you the reason behind this channel. Before I go ahead and read another email. Rocky Mountain View is an interactive, faith-based channel where everyone is welcome and where we encourage viewers like you to email us stories about positive, life-changing moments you've experienced due to your personal relationship with God. Our goal, quite simply, by sharing stories of faith is to help strengthen those in the Christian community who need our help. And these could be your friends, neighbors, family members, or complete strangers, just people who are seeking answers, affirmation, and the strength to overcome difficult moments in their lives. And all the while, we'll be sharing these stories from here, a variety of spectacular locations within the Rocky. So we ask you, take a few moments of your time and email us a life-changing moment which strengthened your faith. And include your name or not, it's entirely up to you. Then when we make our videos here in the mountains, we're going to read and share your story with others. And I guarantee you, and I'm speaking from the heart and personal experience here, by sharing and listening to your experience of the blessings that Spirit has given you, all of us, that's each and every one of us, will experience a much needed strengthening and bolstering of our own faith. We all know this is true because we've all seen and felt these special moments in our lives numerous times. So in a moment, I'll read another email I received after releasing the video, The Voice of God, in which I discussed this new channel. But before then, here's the email address to send your stories to. It's therockymountainview@gmail.com. That's one long word, no capital letters. therockymountainview@gmail.com. And I'll spell it out and include this address again, written into the video description at the end. So thank you again for listening, and now let's get back to our next email. Hello Lee, my name is Jerry Mesa, and I am responding to your request from the video, The Voice of God. Now I gotta let you folks know, Jerry and I have emailed each other back and forth a couple of times since Jerry first contacted us. And he's been kind enough to share many of his personal experiences and his insights. And Jerry's turned out to be someone I would like to call a friend. Someone who's very wise and someone I enjoy hearing from. So with that being said, thank you, Jerry. And now back to your email. Jerry writes, "My story is very unique. I was a young soldier in the 82nd Airborne in 1983 when I said a prayer while alone in my barracks room. What brought me to this point is a long story. To provide a brief background, I had been baptized as a young child of my own free will, but as I grew up, I had developed the belief that science would eventually eradicate God, in the very same way that maturity eradicates Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, and the Tooth Fairy. Thing is, I have not always been right on everything, and I was not so sure that I wanted to risk missing out on heaven if such a thing existed. Now, based on what I'd recently been through that brought me to this point, it was apparent to me that Satan was real. By contrast, then so too must God be real. So I gave God the benefit of doubt. You know, I find it so interesting that Jerry said this, because I 100% agree with him. Now, I've never been in the Army, and obviously I've never witnessed what Jerry likely has, but I've also always believed that for there to be so much evil in the world, and we all know that that is true, then we have to acknowledge that God and Jesus are real. I mean, it seems like a no-brainer to me. Isn't that just basic science? That for every action, there has to be an equal and opposite reaction? Eh? Anyhow, back to Jerry's story. When I prayed for a living God, to a living God who sees me, who hears me, who knew me. When I said this prayer, I gave God the attribute of existence. Here was my prayer. Lord, I want to believe in you, but if you exist, you know me. You created me. You gave me the mind of a scientist. You know that I can't go on blind faith. I need to know for certain that my faith is not misplaced. I need proof. I have to know. I'm sorry, but that's what it's going to take for me. Amen. Well, I got my proof more than once. But after the first few times, I figured there had to be a logical explanation for what I experienced. And isn't that often what we all do? Receive the reply we're looking for and look for another way to explain it away. Been there, Jerry. You see, I needed to witness what could not be explained. I needed to see a see part, a blind man see, a lame man walk, or a dead man rise, or some sort of similar experience as described in the Bible as a genuine miracle. Finally, in 1999, I got such proof, right after coming to the realization that God is love. I came out of this moment of epiphany with a clarity of reality, understanding, and joy, beyond what I can describe, when I heard God's voice. Believe in me, and I will bless you. I could not have been more convinced if I had witnessed all the signs indicated would be required combined. Now, explaining what happened is quite a story, but the issue is there were no witnesses. One would simply have to take my word for it in faith. Afterward, I read the Bible, and have done so cover to cover a number of times, without the filter of doubt. I understand much of what is written in His Word, and I see exactly what is happening in the world. We live in the days where the stage is being set for the one world government. Isn't that the truth? To establish itself where the devil's emissary will eventually arise. I believe that time will be around 2060, as do many biblical scholars, beginning with Sir Isaac Newton. Satan is redoubling his efforts to deceive mankind because he is desperate, knowing his days are numbered. I have much to share, as since that time, God has answered my prayers in the most awesome ways. God is real to hear His voice and to feel the gift of His Holy Spirit, a gift that brings a joy far greater than the highest paying winning lottery ticket in history, and that gift is free. All it takes is complete surrender. Let go of control and trust in God to fill the void, and He will, with the Spirit of His Son, Jesus Christ. There must be a reason for what God has done in my life. I believe that reason will reveal itself soon. Well, Jerry, my friend, I couldn't agree with you more. You know, in our video, The Voice of God, I spoke about the reasons why I decided I wanted to start this series of videos. Because like Jerry, I too knew and know we are in the middle of a battle between good and evil. Certainly more so now than at any other time in my life. And I see and I read how so many people during this past year, after the events of the pandemic and everything else that went on in 2020, have begun to look for answers and guidance and reassurance. And they've either returned to God or have turned to Jesus for for the very first time, seeking answers to their fears and for the strength to continue. And that's why right now, I believe that this is an important time for us all to begin to share our faith, to help bolster others, and to strengthen our own. Well, that is going to be the end of today's emails. I hope you enjoyed them as much as I did. Now, one last favor. If you enjoyed this video and would like to receive others as they appear, please hit the subscribe and like button. Plus, if you would like to share your story, please email to therockymountainview@gmail.com. And remember, I'll put that address in the description of this video. Include your name or not, because I promise either way I will respect your wishes. Have a great day, and may God continue to bless you and yours.